Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
9 minutes before 8 now. While a lot of our attention has understandably been focused on the horrific rapist police officer who will be drummed out of the Met later today, by the way, we must also reflect other major stories, and we will look at this in more detail later in the show, which is the teachers' strike. As we know, these will now currently slated to go ahead, the first of which takes place on the 1st of February, but is there a chance they could be averted? No one better to speak to and ask that question then than the Education Secretary Gillian Keegan. I note today, Secretary of State, that you have a first-person piece in one of the newspapers, The Times, and you say you'll be meeting union leaders today to try and avert the damaging action. When did you last have meetings with them, Secretary of State? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I met them the first day back, actually, on the 9th. So that was my very first meeting, actually, in the new year. And then I will be meeting them tomorrow. And then
tomorrow or today?
Be meeting them.
Tomorrow. It's tomorrow you're meeting. I'm seeing. Okay.
Yeah.
Why can you not meet with them today? Because obviously time marches on. There's only a matter of days before the industrial action is due to bite, Secretary of State.
Well, we'd already had these meetings set up, and there's also official meetings going on as well to share information around what we're inputting to the pay review bodies. We each have to do our submission for the coming year by the 27th of January. So we're trying to share as much information as possible to see where we're each coming from.
Many of my listeners are concerned that we might have to go back to online learning because of these disputes, and also there's something of childcare. You have to facilitate that, either you or your husband or your wife. You have to sort that out. Is there a chance that these strikes could be averted, Secretary of State?
Well, first of all, it's deeply disappointing, actually, that we've got one union. So just so your listeners understand, a number of unions have balloted. The head teachers' unions have not voted for strike action. One of the teachers' unions has not voted for strike action, and the teaching assistant unions have not voted for strike action. So one teaching union has voted for strike action. We issued guidance last night, which has gone to head teachers, which is to enable them to keep as many schools open as possible for as many children as possible. But if we have to, we have asked them to prioritise vulnerable children, exam cohorts, and children of critical workers. So that's where we're at. Obviously, we deeply regret that they've chosen to take this action, and only narrowly, only 53% actually turned out, and only 90% of those actually voted for the strike. So less than half of the teachers in that union. But it is disappointing. Our children have suffered so much during the pandemic, and we have done, the teachers are doing an amazing job of helping them bounce back after that. They've delivered about 3 million catch-up or tutoring or lessons. But, we know we've still got more to do. So we do think it's important that children stay in school, and we'll be doing everything we can to work with head teachers to make that happen.
Secretary of State, some would say if they're doing such an amazing job, why would it appear it's not particularly well rewarded? I have figures here that indicate this is a starting salary for a newly qualified teacher is in the region of £27,000 to £28,000 per annum. That's not a massive salary if they're doing an amazing job, is it?
Okay, so what we agreed to do in our manifesto is to increase starting salaries for teachers, which are usually people leaving university, to £30,000 by September 2023. So we're on that trajectory. It's £28,000 at the moment, and then next year it will be £30,000.
Is that a sufficient salary, do you think?
Well, that's what we looked at in terms of, what's going to attract, new recruits and what's going to attract graduates. We do still attract a lot of teachers. Where we struggle a little bit more is with maths and science and computer science. So what we've done there is we've put additional payments in place for those, and we've also offered bursaries of £27,000 and scholarships as well, so that you get a lot of money towards your fees. So we specifically focus that on maths, science, and computer science, because they're the ones that you struggle more to recruit, but it is still an attractive profession, and we still we didn't meet our recruitment targets just after we came out of the pandemic, but before the pandemic, we were pretty much mostly meeting our recruitment targets, apart from maths teachers and computer science, where you can see that everybody's competing for the same talent.
You'll be aware, Secretary of State, that there's one cohort, this year's GCSE pupils, have had just 1 year of undisrupted learning since starting secondary school. And this, of course, now could be affected. Pupils in year 11 today in England have missed at least 111 days of school because of COVID lockdowns, and possibly now are looking at more days lost due to industrial action. All not on yours, but all on the Conservative watch. What would you say to those children, those pupils, and indeed the parents of that cohort? This is not satisfactory, is it? It's not acceptable.
Well, first of all, they have suffered a lot, and I think they really have been a big focus of trying to help them with catch up, and obviously help them. There'll still be some support during the exams as well, with some formula sheets, etc. But that is why we will prioritise that cohort in particular to be prioritised to come into school. It's really important, and I know lots of people are studying for their mocks at the moment, and I know obviously they'll be concerned about their GCSE. I know lots of kids of that age, myself, and they are always lobbying me to not take the exams actually. But we do need to make sure that we support them to make sure that they are supported to take the exams.
Will a directive or direction be given to the examiners? Because we have to be aware this is obviously unprecedented, Secretary of State. We've never had a cohort miss this much education. Will the examiners take that into account when the papers come before them later this year?
Well, there have been adjustments previously, but those adjustments mostly will fall away. So, we are trying to get back to, business as usual as much as possible. And they have had a lot of focus on, catching up and making sure that, they're studying for the exam curriculum. But there will be some support still in the exams with formula sheets and things like that.
What does that mean? So will the examiners be told that this group have had a hell of a tough, not just year, tough entire build-up to their GCSEs?
Yeah, I mean, the examiners know that, and they've considered, all of that as we've looked along the way. But the reality is that the formula sheets are effectively some formulas that instead of you having to memorise them, you can you'll have them in the exams so that you can apply them as opposed to
what I'd call a crib sheet in my day. Though.
Yes, I suppose so. Yes, which is actually very useful, I think. And actually, I did a little experiment at the weekend and asked our dinner guests how many of them could remember what formulas, and let's just say it's not many people that can remember many of the formulas. So, but of course we will all reach for Google and then remember the formulas. So that's something that we're looking for.
Let me ask you, if the legislation that's being pushed forward by your colleague Grant Shapps are in place concerning minimum service levels during disputes, would that make a difference to the industrial action we're looking at with the teachers? Would you welcome that?
Well, the vote went through last night, so that's the first stage of it, and it was voted through. All we're trying to do there is to make sure that we have the minimum service safety levels in place. It's going to initially focus on health and rail, and education is in there, but we're hoping not to use it for education because at the moment we're not at that stage.
If you don't want to use it, why is it in there?
Well, because we may have to. So we want to make sure that, for example, we need to be able to keep schools open for vulnerable children. That, in particular, that's something we very much learned during the pandemic. So yes, we are part of the bill, but at the moment the focus initially will be on health and rail, and then when we get to that stage, obviously, we'll consider what is reasonable then.
I've got to ask you last couple of questions. As Education Secretary, obviously your life revolves around young people. I understand you're raising sons, but were you raising daughters? The issue we see with the Metropolitan Police, this horrific instance of this rapist police officer, can young women have confidence in the police or indeed in the Met, Secretary of State?
Well, it's very important, in fact vital, that women can trust the police. And the case, I mean, it's an appalling case. It's deeply shocking, actually. And of course, it comes on top of the Sarah Everhard case with Wayne Couzens as well. So there's absolutely no place in our police forces for these officers who seriously fall, below the required standard. And I know the Met Police have done a lot of work, and they've also got more to do as well. But it is absolutely vital. I mean, that's a vital test. We must be able to trust our police, and clearly there have been some officers who have fallen seriously short that have dented our confidence.
Would you feel
so
vulnerable?
The Met have got a lot to do.
If you were pulled over late at night driving home from parliamentary work and you're a single woman on your own, I hasten to add, and a solitary male police officer, would you feel vulnerable?
I probably wouldn't, but I think more and more people now listening to these cases, it gives you pause for thought, right? That's exactly what happened to Sarah Everhard, and it's absolutely shocking.
And final question, coming back to the teacher strike, would Mr. Ashcroft have gone on strike?
I don't know, but I very much hope not. I mean, one of the things that Mr.
Just to remind listeners, this is the teacher who inspired Secretary of State for Education and sort of lit the torch as to what learning can be. Secretary of State, more about Mr. Ashcroft. You don't think he'd have struck?
Well, I don't know, but here's what he did do. When he saw that I couldn't study the things I wanted to study, which was engineering and technical drawing, he stayed behind school till 5:30 to allow me and another girl to do that. When he saw that he had a group of lads in the school that potentially were going to get into trouble, he set up a hockey team and took them every weekend to play hockey. I'm pretty sure Mr. Ashcroft didn't get paid any extra for that. He was an exceptional teacher, and we all remember him very fondly.
Grateful for your time. Thank you. Gillian Keegan, Education Secretary, appearing here on LBC. We're at 2 minutes after 8. The news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, Downing Street says police forces must root out bad officers to restore the public's trust. A misconduct hearing will be held this morning for serving Met officers